Hi, readers. How are you? Good morning, good afternoon. It is Thursday, April 30th, the last day of April, my favorite month. But I'm excited for May. I'm excited. I'm going back to the Northeast next week. And one of the things that I am really looking forward to is leaves on the trees. Are there a lot of leaves on the trees? Have you checked it out? Do you ever do that? I was lived most of my life in Florida. We don't know anything about seasons. And the last 13 and a half years I've lived in the Northeast, and it's one of my favorite things in the whole world when sometimes I travel a lot. So sometimes I might be gone and I come back and I'm like, look at all these leaves in Central Park. It's like so happy. I'm so happy when I see that. Anyway, so I am going to be jumping up and down when I get to New York because I have a feeling my neighborhood's going to look completely different. And especially since I'm new to the neighborhood in Jersey City, it will be really exciting. So anyway, so readers, today what I want to work with you with is we're going to continue working and looking at every living thing and bore out there. And I want to teach you another strategy, really thinking about how do we figure out what our character might be feeling. Remember yesterday we talked about the importance of being open to the possibilities, right, of what they could be feeling, and then jotting a post-it around that. So let me get going with that, and hang on one second because I am getting my, yes, here we go. And here we go. So, thinking a lot about, I gotta figure this out when I get home, are feeling words and thinking a lot about what our character might be thinking or feeling. So I was thinking about this one part that I think is probably the most pivotal point in the story. And I think that's an important thing. Like, how do you figure out? And it's one of these tricky things, like, what comes first, the feelings or the action, or what you're thinking about those things? I think no matter what, one of the things that my strong mentor, Lucy Calkins, used to tell me is, read wide awake. And I think that is the biggest thing, is that when you know that your mind is just kind of going off, get it back in, because if you blink in your mind, you could miss something really important. So you got to read like really with your mind on fire. And because in this moment here, when Jenny actually sees the boar and the boar sees Jenny, it's a pretty powerful moment. So I want to reread this moment of this, it leads up to this. She goes out into the woods, and they actually see one another. And I want to slow this down and really pay attention and think, what must Jenny be feeling in this moment? Really looking at and thinking and studying her actions. So his large black body shivered as he waited just beyond the shadow of the tree she held for support. So they're pretty close, just beyond the shadow of the tree. I mean, depending on the size of the tree, but I think that was intentional to say that they're not that far from each other. His nostrils glistened and his eyes, but astonishingly, he was silent. He shivered and glistened and was absolutely silent. He was shivering. So why do people shiver? Either they're cold or maybe they're scared, right? Tremble, your hands might be trembling if you're scared. So I'm thinking he might be scared. Jenny matched his silence, and her body was rigid, but not her eyes. They traveled along his scarred, bristling back to his thick hind legs. Tears spilling and flooding her face, Jenny stared at the boar's ragged ears, caked with blood. Her tears dropped to the leaves, and the only sound between them was his slow breathing. Okay. So Jenny is doing a couple of things. She's really looking and noticing him. And, Cynthia Rylant, the author, is helping us think about what she sees. Like, we get to see what she sees. And she sees his sorry about that. She sees his scars along his back, right? And that his ears are caked with blood. Okay, so she sees that he must be hurt. And maybe that's also why he's trembling. And so we see what she sees. So she sees that he's hurt. Now, then we also see something else that's happening, because she sees that he's hurt. She starts to cry. And her tears are spilling and flooding her face. So she's just not, she's just not sorry. She's not any kind of crying. She is, her tears are flooding her face, a lot of crying. So what must she be feeling? Like she's doing something very, very physical and outward that we better pay attention to. We better be wide awake, readers, and we better notice it, and we better do something with it. So on first glance, I would say she's sad, right? But let's look at our list, right? We know she's probably feeling down. You know, she's upset. She's crying. So she's feeling down. She's sad. I also think that she is probably concerned and worried and troubled, and maybe even frightened for him, but not frightened of him, frightened for him. Frightened for him because something happened to him, and whether it's in the wilderness or whether it's a human being, he's hurt. So maybe she is also feeling really frightened for him. But these tears, they're not your typical sad or angry or afraid tears. She's not frightened of him for sure, but she's certainly concerned and I think worried, and maybe frightened for him. And then I do think she's sad, but I think because she is showing us her tears, it feels bigger and maybe a little bit more high energy than that. And one of the things I've been thinking a lot about with the low energy, high energy, is sometimes we can be sad and we don't show it. We don't cry, you know, we keep it inside. I think a lot of times some of our low energy, down feelings that are low energy, we don't always show. The high energy down feelings, though, I think those are shown more. And when we see them, we want to pay attention, and we want to really try to name what exactly do we think she might be feeling. And I think Jenny must be feeling, I started writing, oopsie, my Post-it. Jenny must be feeling real sadness, concern, and even worry for the boar. You know, if I look up the list a little bit more, sorry. If I look up the list a little bit more, she may have been even feeling shock, right? So maybe even, you know, the tears are from, I don't know if they're from shock, but they could be. Maybe tears are from shock, seeing he is hurt instead of him hurting or wanting to hurt me. So readers, one thing I think is so important is I think it's really important to pay attention to characters and their outward actions. If they're crying, if they're saying something, if they're doing something that feels like big, you know, high energy, we want to make sure that we're not glossing over those things. They are there for a reason. The author wants you to pay attention to them. And the way I think about it, when somebody's crying, it's pretty obvious, right? Whether it's in person or whether it's in a book, that something's not right. We don't know exactly what it is, not unless we talk to that person, but we can think about what's happening in a text and we can imagine what it is. We know that the people of Glenmorgan are afraid of this boar. And so maybe she's crying because she is afraid of what what else could happen to this poor animal who is out there in the wilderness by himself with everybody against him, right? So those tears are not, when we see tears, they could mean many, many different things, but we want to hold on to the text to think about what feeling feels closest that matches what's happening in the text. And we really want to pay close attention and read wide awake with real purpose, and sort of like this feeling of like, I want to imagine, I want to live in her shoes, and I want to really imagine what she might be feeling, and then jotting a post-it around that. Okay, readers, and again, like, one thing I've been thinking a lot about lately is that sometimes people, including me, say and do things that feel like others should pay attention to. And sometimes people don't. And that happened to me recently. I shared something kind of personal with someone, and this person changed the subject. And it was really interesting to me. And I'm not quite sure why that person did that. However, I noticed it, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that person that when somebody says something to me, or somebody's crying, or somebody's hurting in some way, that I change the subject. I want to be there. I want to notice it, and I want to hold that person's hand and help them through it. And I know that's what you want to. So readers, happy reading. It's our last day of reading work today. Not sure what's happening next week. I'm traveling next week, so I don't think I'm going to be videotaping. And I think the following week, I'm going to be working with teachers. So readers, just keep reading lots, keep writing lots, and keep paying attention, close attention to those feelings. Thank you. Take care. Bye.